simplifying ratios, what we're doing is we're going to be comparing the amounts of quantities, and most of the time it's going to be two quantities, but it can be more than two. It can be three or four. What those two quantities are, they must be in the same units. Okay, the quantities must be the same units, so if we have a ratio, it's got to be meters to meters or liters to liters, but not something like dollars to miles, something that doesn't make any sense. All right, also our final expression of a ratio, it's not going to have any units. It's not going to have any meters or kilometers in there, just the expression. Lastly, when we simplify these ratios, what we're going to do is divide each number by whatever the highest common factor is. And so I don't write highest common factor each time. We're going to abbreviate it like that. So let's look at some examples here. Okay, so the final ratio would look something like this. We use a colon to separate the two values if I'm comparing two quantities, and they'll have no common factors other than 1. And so how we read a ratio that looks like this, we just say 2 to 3. So we could say 2 boys for every 3 girls. We could say 2 units of butter for 3 units of sugar, but there's no units in my final answer. Okay, so let's do some simplifying. So with these examples, first of all, with my answers, I'm going to have whole number answers with all of these. I don't want any decimals or fractions in my simplified ratio. So we get these aren't anything too difficult. 4 and 16. And I go, well, what highest common factor is the biggest one that goes into both of those? And that's going to be 4 for this one. So I divide each of these by 4. The ratios work like fractions. And basically, I'm kind of like simplifying a fraction of 4/16. And 4/16 would simplify to a fraction of 1 over 4. It's a similar method. So 4/16 is going to give me a simplified ratio of 1 to 4. Now the next one I have, 21 centimeters to 14 centimeters, they're in the same units, so I don't have to worry about changing it. That's just simply 21 to 14. And then I go, okay, wait, I can simplify that because they've got a highest common factor of 7. So I'll just divide both of these by 7, and I'd get 7 is 14 divided by 7 is 2. So I'd get a simplified ratio of 3 to 2. No common factors in 3 and 2 except for 1. Okay, next one, 250 to 150. You want the highest common factor, not just a common factor. 2 is a common factor, 5 is a common factor, 10 is a common factor, 25 is a common factor, but the biggest one is going to be, the biggest one's going to be 50. So I divide both by 50. So we got 5 here, and 150 divided by 50 gives me 3. 5 to 3, and we check, no common factors. Good. Now, a ratio can be 3 different things, 30, 60, 90. Here's where we can't really use our calculator, and we don't really have fractions that have 3 values like this. So 4/16 simplifies like a fraction, but 30, 60, 90 doesn't. So here we've got to do this highest common factor method, and this one isn't anything too difficult, but you do have to think. The biggest number isn't 2, isn't 5, isn't 10. It's going to be 30. So I'm going to divide each of these values by 30. 30 divided by 30 is 1. 60 divided by 30 is 2. And 90 divided by 30 is 3. So I get a ratio of 1 to 2 to 3. You can have more than one thing in just a ratio. And usually this example I use for talking about triangles. Triangles can have angles in a ratio of 1 to 2 to 3 if their angles are 30, 60, and 90. Okay, next one, meters, centimeters. I can't compare meters to centimeters, can't have a ratio. So you change it to the same units. And which units you choose matter because they'll still be in the same ratio. So if you want to change it to centimeters, then change it to centimeters. 6 meters is going to be 600 centimeters to 700 centimeters. I'm not going to multiply that side by 100 because I want it in the same unit. So now, highest common factor is pretty easy to see. I think it's going to be 100. Divide each by 100, and I get 6 to 7. Okay, so we're not going to write 6 to 700. So the highest common factor for that one was 100. Highest common factor equals 100. This is always a good one. Money. All right, cents to dollars, dollars to cents. Doesn't matter what you change it to, but I'll try to avoid decimals just because it's easier to work with nice whole numbers, which all of mine have been. So I'll change them both to cents. 60 cents to, what's $2? That's 200 cents. So I'm saying 60 to 200. And now I've got to simplify that. And the biggest number that goes into both of those would be what? All right, so my highest common factor is 20 for that one. And if you don't get it on the first go, like say you thought the highest common factor was 10, you'd simplify it again one more time to break it down. So I divide by 20. 60 divided by 20 gives me 3. And 200 divided by 20 gives me 10. All right. Okay, so those examples are quite easy. Let's do some more difficult ones. So simplifying these guys is a little bit more difficult because we have decimals and fractions, and in my simplified ratio I want nice whole numbers like this. Okay? So first up, I don't do this highest common factor thing yet because what I want to do is, like a fraction, I want to make them both whole numbers first. So what's going to make these both whole numbers is if I multiply both sides by 10. And if I multiply both sides by 10, by 10, what I get here is I get 2.3 times 10 is 23, and 5 times 10 is 50. It's easier to deal with whole numbers than it is with decimals. So I look at this, and 23 to 50 doesn't have any common factors, so I'm finished. All I had to do for that one was write it as two whole numbers. So the same thing here. I could multiply both sides by 10, and that would give me 5 to 150, but other people just say, well, just double that, because if you double a half, you just get 1. So that's an okay way to do it as well. I could say times 2 and times 2. And 0.5 times 2 is just 1. And 15 times 2 is just 30. So 1/2 to 15 is the same as 1 to 30. And that's a little bit easier to understand at 1 to 30. So far, no simplifying yet by the highest common factor. 3/4 to 8. I want to get rid of that denominator. I don't want to deal with fractions. So one way not to deal with fractions is to multiply by that denominator. And if I multiply 3/4 by 4, and I multiply 8 by 4, 3/4 times 4 is just 3. And 8 times 4 gives me 32. I look. 3 and 32 I don't think have any common factors. So again, I'm finished. And finally, okay, 4.2 to 0.6. I think I'll just get rid of both decimals by multiplying both sides by 10. And that gives me 42 to 6. And here I do have a highest common factor of 6, I think. Yep. So when I divide both by 6, 42 divided by 6 is 7, and 6 divided by 6 is 1. So I get 7 to 1. And whole number ratios are just much easier to understand.